Welcome. I'm Janelle Kolaski, a career mindset coach and actor.
And I'm Amanda Dubois, a self-authenticity and prosperity life coach and actor as well. And we're your co-host of Mindset Artistry YouTube channel,
where we teach you the art of discovering and using your mindset
to build a career and life you desire.
Tonight, we're going to talk about acceptance. And it got me thinking about the types of acceptance, right? Acceptance can be in many forms, and self-acceptance, accepting your feelings, accepting situations, accepting relationships, and accepting people for who they are, all these things. And I realized that acceptance is the difference between holding a boulder on your shoulders and letting it go. Right? Because when we don't accept things for what they are, I feel as if it becomes this boulder on our shoulders and we walk around with it. And what I mean, and acceptance for me can definitely spill into many avenues, like I said, in your life, self-acceptance and all these things. But there's a gift in the idea of acceptance. And that's why I wanted to talk about it today, because for so long I felt the lack of acceptance that I had for myself, as well as situations and people. And I had this tendency of wanting to have a certain outcome with things and people. Mm-hmm. And when that didn't happen, I automatically went into this recoiled, state of remorse and anger and resentment or self-pity, self-sabotaging, and it just kind of rippled on into other avenues of my life. So tell me, what is your experience when it comes to acceptance?
Well, you know me, I can be pretty stubborn. We have some Aries up in here. And the stubbornness has served me well in many cases. I'm a very driven person. And so I don't like to just accept a situation as it is. I like to look at what I can take control of, what I have responsibility in. But that also can be very damaging, because sometimes to serve yourself and to serve those around you, you just have to accept that sometimes people don't like the same, but it is what it is. And so I've just recently, there's been a couple situations that I realized I just have to accept them as they are, whether it be something at work or relationships, friendships, anything. And it really benefits you when you learn when to accept things, because you kind of have to, because you have a lack of control there.
Right. I love that. And the lack of control definitely is really, it just makes so much sense when it comes to that acceptance. And we're not saying like accept cruel behavior. We're not accepting, we're not accepting anything that's toxic or negative. We're not talking about accepting that. We're talking about the acceptance of the situation and people and who they are, because you can't change anyone. The only thing you can change is your reaction and how you can control your interaction with that person or situation, or, perfect example. We talked about this last week when it came to like accepting your weaknesses, right? When you accept your weaknesses, it's not saying that, oh, okay, I'm going to allow myself to stay here, stay at this level and maintain this weakness. What you're saying is you're acknowledging that acceptance with that weakness, and therefore it's giving you the space now to make a choice or a decision upon how you want to make or change that weakness or improve on that weakness. My gosh, New York City, I swear.
Sorry.
No, it's not your fault. Gotta love it. Gotta love it. The background, it's the music.
I know, but I'm moving, so no longer I no longer have to accept the noise.
There you go. Talking about acceptance. You no longer wanted to accept that, and therefore you decided to move.
Yeah, but there was a time when I had to, especially when auditions were happening. Amanda and I are also actors, and it's really hard to accept the sirens when you're trying to...
Yeah, you just come down to realizing, all right, there's a certain time that I can do auditions, so that's when I'll do it. Just that, kind of that simple.
The great acceptance story. Exactly. You're like, I can't change this, so let me choose the timing, and that was big. Okay, let me choose how much time I spend around this person, or let me choose how I speak to myself. I think it's really great learning how to accept.
Yeah, I was talking to a client earlier today, and not to share too much, but we were having a conversation about, interactions with people. And I had to frankly ask this person, what do you want? Because I feel like a lot of people, including myself, we know what we want, but sometimes we're afraid to say it out loud, right? We're afraid to admit that we want bigger and better things, that we want a certain relationship, that we want a certain job, we want to live a certain place. Sometimes we say it internally, but it's hard for us to externalize that because we feel like we're going to get criticized or it's not going to happen. All these negativities around that, right? And so we were talking about that, and I frankly asked, like, what do you want? And they told me what they wanted, and they were dealing with a situation. It just kept an argument or a disagreement just kept coming up. And I asked them what they wanted. And when they told me what they wanted, I realized, and I helped them realize that they already knew how to handle the situation because it didn't align with what they wanted their life to be. So they felt like, I was like, well, honestly, in this situation, is this person or situation fitting into what you really want your life to look like without hurting anyone? Obviously, without hurting anyone, is this fitting into what you want? And they were like, no. There you go. So you already have the answers within, but they had to accept that this situation was no longer a part of where they wanted to be in their future and what they wanted. And that is a form of acceptance, because that we tend to get comfortable in certain behaviors that we want more, we want better, but we don't know how to get there because we've gotten so comfortable being in places that serve that. But now, how the heck do we get out of it? So instead of getting out of it, you just kind of go, all right, I'm going to accept where I am. Okay, fine. You accept where you are. Now, what's the next step? Either stay there or make a decision. Has there been a situation outside of the apartment and the noise that you had to make this epiphany moment of an acceptance to make a major decision in your life?
Let me think about that for 1 second. I think I could think of a couple friendships or relationships where I wanted them to be something, and in my opinion, there's no reason that they couldn't have been. But it takes two, and I had to accept the fact that despite wanting to get along with certain people, it just wasn't going to happen. And I did all I could, and I think this is something that's really important to pay attention to. Definitely take responsibility for yourself and making yourself better, improving on you, trying to show up in relationships and everywhere else in your life. But at a certain point, when other people aren't coming to bat, they're not showing up equally, you have to accept the fact that that's their decision, and that's really hard. Because it's easy for me to accept not booking an audition like 100 times over because we're so used to that or something. But for some reason, with relationships that I want to be good, wherever, it's like it could be a stranger on the street, it could be somebody at work, it could be something personal. It is hard for me to accept if the other person can't meet me in the middle. But that only hurts me. It doesn't hurt them at all because they don't care. And so I don't know if anybody listening goes through that, but that's definitely, I would say, the hardest thing in my life for me to accept, is when people don't want to meet me halfway. But it's also kind of a blessing because those people aren't for me, right? I read something today that said you really shouldn't have to push too much. You should, you're going to have to work a little, and collaboration and communication is important from human to human. But if you have to push so hard, it's just not meant to be. So that's hard to accept, but it's the truth.
Yeah, that's some serious truth bombs there, because I can agree with you 100%. There have been many relationships and interactions with individuals and groups of people that I would have, I saw potential. I saw where it could have gone, but then I don't know if I was fantasizing on things, right? I don't know if I was creating these where it could have gone, right? The coulda, shoulda, wouldas kind of thing. And then because I was in this state of fantasizing what these relationships could have been, I wasn't focusing on what they were. I wasn't focusing on that person or situation for what they are as a matter of fact, right? When you're accepting something, you're accepting it for as a matter of fact, for what it is right in front of you. It's like looking in the mirror and seeing yourself, like you're accepting it for what it is. And it was a real eye-opener when I came to that realization that I was fantasizing about these relationships or interactions or even anything rather than accepting it, because had I accepted it, I would have had a different interaction with it. I don't know if I would have necessarily put as much effort, but my energy would have been put into focusing on me and what I really wanted out of my life and what I needed and what I needed to focus on, and realizing that, like you said, that person may not be for me, or that job may not be for me, and again, accepting doesn't mean that you give up. It doesn't mean that you accept negative or toxic behavior. We're just telling you to accept things for what they are so that you can make a good judgment or a good choice, not based in, I guess, in the heightened emotional state. Because sometimes that can be a fault of ours where we make decisions on our emotions rather than, the matter of fact. And then you go into it and realize, fuck, that is not what I wanted. Or I accepted something and I really accepted it, but it's not something that I condone or appreciate. The red flags, and red flags can be anything: family, friends, jobs. Following your intuition is very big with acceptance as well. And I love the idea around acceptance, because I think with society today, there's this idea that we should be a certain way, we should look a certain way, that our lives should be a certain way. This is what happiness looks like, accept it, right? That's what happiness looks like. And it's like, really? Well, I accept it. I acknowledge that that's what you think. But now I need to realize and evaluate for myself, what is it that I want to accept and have it reflect my reality, my world around me.
Yeah.
And
yeah, and I really like what you're saying about just look at the facts, like, and not, fantasizing or making something what it's not. So funny how things can pop up in our life. Like, I listened to something today that talked about that, where it's just like, it's very easy, and as I always say, not judging anybody on here, but it's very easy to get your emotions involved. And so this podcast I was listening today, they just really suggested, like, look at the facts. Just look at the facts to help you accept things. And it's just the best way to go, because otherwise you're just going to stay in situations that you shouldn't be in. But can it be very hard, for the stubborn people out there, for the people that really want to make things work. Yeah, and then even for me, another thing I'm learning is choosing when to speak up can be very hard. Choosing when it's time to say something when it isn't. Growing up protecting my brother all the time, I always said something, and I wouldn't accept behavior, and it drove me crazy because people were being cruel. But it's so easy for that to then become ingrained in you. And then I kind of lost sight of when, I just need to accept that that's how this person is, and they'll probably aren't going to change. It's not my job to change them. And it is hurting me just not accepting how they are. Because I love people. I accept who you are as a person. But I'm talking about these negative behaviors that people have that can hurt you and do hurt you. and I'm always constantly trying to fix that and make amends and talk it out, communicate, how can we make it work? But you just can't. You just have to accept sometimes it's just how that person is, you know?
Yeah. I love that. And I love about accepting people in situations as who they are, because here's the beauty too. When you accept a person or the situation, you have an opportunity to not compromise, but really have a honest conversation with that person.
Mm-hmm.
An honest conversation that can make space for you to address or release or let go or tell the truth about what you want, right? Or this is what I had expected, and I'm not really a fan of expectations, but we all have it, whether we admit it or not. We have a form of expectations, but it's how long do you hold on to it? But um, you know, just imagine in a relationship, you accept that person for who they are, but then now that's opening up a conversation to go, well, if you accept me for who I am and I'm accepting you for who you are, how can we create this strong bond or relationship? What is it that we need from each other? Think about the idea of the love languages, right? There's different types of love languages out there, right? And when you accept someone is one that, they prefer gifts but you don't, right? That's not something you care about. You're accepting that they prefer gifts and you prefer physical affection. I think that's the one it was, or touch or something like that, right? That's accepting, and then that's really allowing space to create bonds, create strong relationships, and create this space to be truthful. And there's that beauty behind the acceptance. And then again, regardless if it's toxic, that's a whole nother story. And we're not, belittling anyone or judging anyone. This is a judge-free zone, no matter what. And we always make it an honest space. Whatever you're feeling or whatever you're going through, feel free to drop it in the comments. DM us if you need, help in any way. And we have something special that we're going to do Sunday. And we're going to talk about that in the end. But, this is a safe space. And when I really discovered acceptance, when I started taking the journey of healing and really defining who I was and what I wanted. And what you want can honestly change every single day. But there's this this overall want that you want, that you desire, which is like happiness. And then come down, what does that happiness look like for you in all the avenues of your life? Having the amazing job, or working part-time and, raising a family, or traveling the world, or going to school, like whatever that looks like, that's what I had to come to a realization, that I had to accept who I was, what I had been through, right? Because I can't change it. Here's the thing. You can't change the past. So you have to accept it. This is another thing about accepting situations for what they were back then. You can't go back in time. I wish I could, but you can't. We haven't gotten that technology yet. Or if they do, pass it my way. I have a couple of things that I would like to change. I know you're listening, so pass it my way.
They are listening.
All right, they are listening. I can't go back. So I accepted the choices I've made. I accepted the situations that I've been in. And now, what were the lessons that I can learn from today, that I can share with somebody, that I can help someone? And this is the reason why I also became a life coach, because I've realized that there are so many lessons we tend to overlook, right? And I realized that, there's a gift as a life coach to help others, discover the possibilities, discover who they are, and then, build upon that. Yeah.
Well, and I was going to say, I really liked that you highlighted that you really found when and what to accept when you defined your own authenticity, because I think that would be the next question I would ask. Maybe somebody out there is curious about, is when do you know, because this is something I kind of had to figure out the hard way because I am stubborn. When do you know it is time to just accept? Because I always have that thing, especially, you know, we're actors and you just want to keep pushing because you don't know what's around the bend when the next opportunity is. Um, but for example, for modeling, I had to accept that I'm not meant to do runway. Now, of course, I could have pioneered runway for my type of body, my body type, which is size 8'10", which is still considered plus size, but not, and whatever. But if I was really honest with myself, I didn't care that much. And then I was grateful that I could just accept the fact that that's not the type of modeling that I'm meant to do, because then it led me to the type that I do now that is consistent and pays well and is fit for who I am as a person for the most part as I'm leaving it. But I think that's really how you find what you need to accept is by checking in with yourself. Like, how does this feel? Does this feel good? Um, Acting, I'm not going to accept that I'm not where I want to be yet because I'm still feeling I'm supposed to stay in it. But then with the modeling, I'm good. I accept that I did not end up doing what I envisioned as a 13-year-old girl that I would do, because my journey showed me better results for who I am as a person following that journey and accepting, like, no to this, yes to this. And I saw something else today that talked about when you're not being yourself and you're forcing alignment and you're just trying to get a yes out of that, it's keeping you from everything that you're meant to be aligned with. You're spending all that energy not accepting the stuff you're not aligned with based on who you are, all that energy going over there. If you would just accept it and move over here, it would take you closer to what you're meant to be doing. And I was kind of like, ooh. I was like, oop, I better just accept what I'm not aligned with and let go, because the longer I do that, the more I'm staying away from what is truly aligned with me. And I was kind of like, oh my God, because refusing to accept is a scarcity mindset block. Because if you just accept it, well, what if? I'm supposed to say yes to everything. I'm supposed to everything is supposed to work out and everything's an opportunity. But there's a lot that you just got to accept and move on so you can get to things that are more aligned with you.
I love that. I love every aspect of that. You know, a few things, and I love the scarcity mindset when it comes to the acceptance, because, you know, when we don't accept something, it's because we think that, right, there's a scarcity out there, you know, thinking about us as an actor. And it's interesting you said that you're not happy where you are or like accepting where you are in your career right now. And I love that you said that, and thank you for your honesty as well, because you're accepting the modeling, but you're not accepting the acting. And it doesn't necessarily mean a negative thing. She's accepting that this is her life and where she wants it to be. She's just realizing that the things that are the tools, or every situation that she's in with the acting, she could be doing more, or there's more to learn, you know. So don't think that even though you're not accepting something, it doesn't mean that there's a negative aspect around it. It's really just accepting, like, okay, it's accepting where you are, but not accepting that you're going to stay there. There it is. That's right. What I was trying to get to.
And I was a child. I was 13. So, for example, I didn't know my right path. But what's cool about life is you move towards something. So keep it moving out there. Don't be afraid to make choices because you're afraid of what you're going to have to accept or not accept. You know, I got into modeling thinking the only type of modeling out there was magazines and runway. And so that is how I got into it. But then I found I am so wrong for that. I'm not cut out for that. But then it led me to a type that's better fit for me and has been a good thing for the past 10 years now. So I was able to accept what I thought as a 13-year-old would be the dream. I was like, nah, I accept that it is not the dream for me. I'm good. I have found my dream somewhere else. So I think it's cool. And you'll know, because it's just like, you'll be like, I have no desire to do this or that. I have no desire to stretch myself, to talk to this person or maintain this thing. And that'll tell you, like, well, I'm just going to accept that I thought that would work, but it didn't. All right, next.
Yeah, I love that. And like the idea of like accepting all within that, accepting the failure, right? Like, I meant to mention that, like, when you accept the failure, you're acknowledging that it didn't happen the way you wanted it to or expected it to, but there's another way. And like you said, like when you were 13, you had this vision of like, this is what I want to do, and this is the modeling I want to be. And then you realize, like, wait a minute, I don't think I'm really cut out for this, or it's not the lifestyle I want. But within that, I found my niche. I found where I can truly be authentically myself. I can be the Janelle Koloski that I want to be as a model. And you brought your full self into that because you accepted that where you thought you belonged wasn't actually where you did. And you made space for something that was true to your path, true to your life purpose, along with the acting and all the amazing things, other things that you do. And I love that because I think we can tend to get caught up in like what success looks like. We constantly talk about that, but I really do feel like, there's a heavy weight around success, right? What does success look like? And we have to accept that success looks different for everyone. Your success is not going to be the same as someone else's success, right? And realizing that also within that success, what is your happiness? Because for one person out there, success can be, not getting married and not having kids and really just traveling the world and having a multi-billionaire business. Whereas like on the flip side, maybe you do want to build a family, but you still want to have a successful business, but you want to have that flexibility to maybe just work 3 to 4 days a week and still spend time with your family and travel. That's that honesty. That's that acceptance of realizing that, no, I want that acceptance. I want that success versus this success where it's like, that's not the life I want. And there's nothing wrong with having either. There's nothing wrong. I was listening to a podcast recently. I sent it to Janelle, where it was these amazing women who were powerhouses that had to accept that they didn't want kids because they were told that, they grew up in a certain culture where it was like, we were bred to just bear kids. That's it. Bear kids and serve our husbands, right? In certain cultures. And there's nothing wrong with that either. If you want to do that, by all means, go for it. I admire you for doing that, right? I admire everyone. But they came to an acceptance of like, actually, I don't want kids. My kids are like my dogs. And, I just want to have my successful business and help people and inspire and travel the world. That was a big acceptance. And it took time. Please, again, always allow space and time for your acceptance to settle. It's like the dust. You're basically kicking up dust and rocks and all these things. Allow it to settle. Give it the space and time it needs to realize, and for you to also come to that epiphany moment, because you may realize, oh, I accept it, but then what does that feel like? What does that look like in your life? What does that mean for people in your life, right? Because then once you accept that, that's also going to affect people around you. And so when you accept that, you also have to have those conversations with people, like, realizing that if you're in a relationship with a partner and when you first started, you said you wanted kids and now you don't, right? And that was the podcast that I was listening to. They had that idea. They agreed between their partner that they would have kids. But later on, as they built their successful businesses and discovered who they were and got older, they go, well, I actually don't want to have kids. Okay. And they had to sit with that and what that felt like, and then have that conversation with that person, because they had to allow the space to mourn like that expectation, and then where to go after that. Acceptance is very big. Acceptance is a powerful thing, like anything that we have talked about in Coffee with Coaches. Acceptance is really being rooted in who you are and what you want your life to look like, and being honest with it. And I wouldn't say, yes, be unapologetic about it. I was going to say not to, but no, be unapologetic about it, because the people who are in your corner, the people that you are aligned with, like Nell said, will always be there, but be there for you, but give them space and time to get there too. Right? Don't expect someone when you came up with this epiphany to go, oh yeah, so I am going to quit my job today and I think I'm going to travel the world. What? slow down. Where did this come from? Give them the space and time to get to where you are, or eventually not, and then choose to move on. But like, give that space to someone as well, when it comes to acceptance, because you may accept it, but someone else may not understand. I wouldn't say disagree, but they may not understand. And if they don't ultimately understand and they want to move on, let them. If somebody wants to leave, let them.
Mm-hmm.
Just let them. And that's hard. That's really hard, especially when emotions are involved. And, we could definitely talk about that. Accepting, especially when it comes to family you can't change, but I without going into too much detail, and I should talk about that in another time, but just accepting, like, when you have to cut ties to heal, to live your best life, not that you don't love them, but accept that they are either toxic or that they just don't quite understand, and they may, but give them time. And in that time, just walk away. Just walk away. Yeah. Any last words or thoughts or, advice about acceptance?
Yeah, I would just say the other day we were talking about being in a rut, and I think this just goes along with that. Really, the first step of acceptance is mindfulness and just kind of checking in how you're feeling, checking in with your body mostly. You can feel kind of probably a lot of tension when you're feeling limited. And pay attention to patterns and things that you really feel like you're really trying to make work. It's so hard to make work. And the good things do take work, but it shouldn't be all you, and it shouldn't be so difficult that it's making you ill. If there's no reciprocation, it's probably a sign that you need to accept maybe the job, the person, whatever. Maybe some part of yourself has to die. I'd accept recently that a certain part of myself has to die, that I've spent a good 30 some years building up for me to move to the next level. I accepted it. Now making it happen is something different. But I just encourage everybody to be mindful, because for us to live our best lives, you want to find your authenticity and what aligns with you. And mindfulness and acceptance is the key to that.
I love that. Thank you for dropping those gems. And, when it comes to, like, we talked about being a rut, like Nell said, when you are in that kind of space, write it down, let it out, start writing down certain things that keep repeating so that you're aware of it. And then, being mindful. How can you get out of it, or how can you heal from it? How can you improve on it? And that's a beautiful thing. It's tough and it's not easy, but you can do it, because like everything, and I always say this too shall pass. Also, fuck that shit. It'll move on. But if it's not going to matter in a year from now or 5 years from now, let it go. Just fucking let it go. If it's not going to matter, you're not going to fucking care in 5 to 10 years from now. You're going to laugh at yourself and be like, I don't even know why I put so much energy into that. They wasted so much time.
What are your thoughts about this episode?
Drop it in the comments and let us know what you want to dive into next.
Subscribe, like, share, and click the link below to book a free consultation. And
We'll see you next time.